What is it about men and why we don't speak about our mental health sometimes? What do you think that is? When we talk about the younger generations, I sometimes feel that mental health now gets overused, almost weaponised.
You think when you're a teenager, 18, not got a lot of money, sometimes you're down to your last fiver, yet in some sense, you're at the freest part of your life.
You've just started up and you're looking to make the first few thousand, maybe. Do you want to go and speak to a billionaire? Hi, I'm Mark Constable.
Hi, I'm Mike Payne.
Hi, I'm Stuart Swindell.
And this is the Stuck
As
Fuck
Podcast.
Ever feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall? Running the business can take everything out of you. And somewhere along the way, you start to wonder, how and where did I lose myself in all of this?
Welcome to Stuck as Fuck, the podcast for business owners, leaders and entrepreneurs who have hit that point. Burnt out, fed up and desperate for a way forward. We're here to help.
This is real talk with real people. And the best part, you don't have to do it all alone.
Let's work it out and break free together.
Welcome to another episode of Stuck as Fuck. Before we jump into the podcast, please make sure you subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the more input we get, and the more points of view we get, and the more discussion points we get.
So today we're talking about mental health awareness. Gents, we're going to be talking about mental health awareness.
Big subject.
A very big subject, obviously, yeah. And so, what is it about men and why we don't speak about our mental health sometimes? What do you think that is?
Pride. Put it out there. Pride?
Yeah.
But what is it about pride? Why do you think, what is it we're trying to hide with our pride?
I wasn't really trying to hide anything. I would say it's probably more along the lines of we are old school meant to be. I think that it comes down to the way that we've been brought up. Now I know there's a bit of an age gap between us, not a massive one,
Yeah.
but we've both probably, all three of us, probably been brought up the same. Where I know I was told that not to show weakness, not to tell your feelings, just be a man.
Man up.
100%. Take some man up pills.
Yeah, man up.
You know, it's all different now. I mean, you know, you see it with individuals that are the younger than us in their 20s, and that they're now coming into that where it's actually acceptable to talk about your feelings and so on. But I think we are at that age where we're, especially for me anyway, was told not to do that.
But go on.
Well, I was going to say there's an interesting point as well with that, because when we talk about the younger generations, I sometimes feel that mental health now gets overused, almost weaponised. It's like, I don't like doing that, so it's it's affecting my mental health, and it gets used as an excuse to not do things.
On that note, sorry, you know what? I just remembered. Did you hear about? There's a university. This absolute bizarre. There's a university that was providing mental health for its students because they were stressed out that they were studying.
I didn't
Got a laugh,
but that would be an example of what I'm talking about.
Crazy, it's absolute madness.
Now, so I mean, not to distract away from what we're talking about, but you know, is it things like that maybe where we think it's an overused term like mental health, and I can't do this, it's my mental health, and so on and so forth, and it gets used as some sort of a valid excuse to not do things, and that causes resistance with other people to go, I don't want to be tarred with that, or I don't, you know, so you know, I've got to keep the old British stiff upper lip and be quite stoic in the way that I think about things, and keep that bottled up.
Yes, and say I'm okay when you're not okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a response you often hear, like, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
That's a common response, and that, oh, I'm fine, really means nothing. Because you can be fine, feeling really great, or, good, or fine, meaning I ain't feeling too good.
Yeah. I think we've all lost friends to suicide.
Yeah.
And you know, the really hard thing for me is I've been in contact with some of those people that have taken their life fairly short after I'd spoken to them, like within weeks of me speaking to them, and I'd sort of known something wasn't right. And I'm pretty good at this stuff. I mean, it's what I do for a living, is to get people to talk and open up. But for some reason, there was an awkwardness about it, that they didn't want to go there. And I think it's going back to what you said, Mike. It's about a pride factor. It's like, by talking about some of the things that are bothering them, it's almost like, well, you know, I won't be seen as the man I should be, or something like that.
Yeah.
I think especially, I think it comes down to who your friends are as well. You know, at the end of the day, if you've got friends that are prepared to open up and have the same conversations, because we're all going through the same stuff, it's just different environments.
Yeah.
Right? But if you've got friends that are there and you want to talk to them, and they're actually saying, oh, "Don't worry about it, it's all good," you know, this and other, you actually sort of think to yourself, "Well, I'm here with my pals who I've known for X amount of time. They expect me to be a certain way because that's what I've portrayed over a certain period of time. Yeah. Actually, how do I approach this individuals and turn around and say, do you know what, boys, I'm actually really struggling."
Yeah. That's quite, even with your best friends, that's quite a difficult thing to do.
100%.
I think that comes down to identity, and it's the identity that we've created for ourselves, and we stick to that because we think that that's the most important thing, but it is just the mask. That identity is just the mask. Yeah. And I think that that's something that's, a really important factor with all of these types of things, is that, are we just trying too hard to stick to this identity, this persona that we've created? And we feel like by being open, vulnerable, talking about some of these issues, that we're actually going against that, and it makes us less of a man. Yeah. Is that what it is, do you think?
Well, maybe... Going back to my point, maybe nowadays, no. I think it's very fast becoming the norm, as you were saying. Yes, it's overused, but I think people our age actually haven't explored that idea. I think it's uncharted territory for us. Yeah. And it's very it's very scary to go and do that. But I think now we are slowly. I used to think that we were there, as in front. But we're actually miles behind these new generations. So I think it's actually fast becoming the norm, where there's a lot more help. You know, I'll give you an example. When I left the forces, there wasn't any help. Yeah. When you left. There was zero. Yeah. You know, the Americans are fantastic at it. Yeah. The British Army, back in 2009, 2010, wasn't. But now, when you come out of the British Army, you go through a complete mental health process. And I think it comes down to backgrounds, friends, actually know. This is another thing as well. Actually knowing what you want to discuss.
Yeah. And culture, right? Because
agreed.
English have the culture stiff upper lip. Yeah. You know, we've got to be okay. That's fine. But what it teaches in a way is teaching us to be perfectionists. In a sense, because it has to be right, and at the end of the day, right, it's a lie. It's actually a lie, because none of us get things perfectly, ever really. There is no such thing as perfection. You can practice and become better. You know, practice makes better. Not perfect. And I think it's important to recognise that we get things wrong. You know, one of the things that's important when I spoke to my son, who's 13 now, and he tries this and tries that, and don't put him under pressure to find the thing. Like, allow him to experiment and to test out the world and find what works for him, because you don't know until you've tried. Sure. And I think that view about, we've got to get it right and we can't admit to being wrong, actually stops us developing.
I totally agree. One of the other things on it as well, I mean, going back to the identity bit, is sometimes when we're in that sort of place in life where we're starting to get worried or stressed about things, whether it's money, whether it's about our job or security, is I think it's very easy to put a belief in place that those things are way more important than they are. Especially around things like money, for example, we can believe that we are going to run out of it or we're going to be totally skint. Yet often it's just sort of relative to what your relationship with money is. You know, I've said to myself, I'm skint, I've got no money. You know, I've got no money. That's never been true. I've never had no money.
Yeah.
Never ever had no money. I've just had less than I want, less than I would like, and it may be less to make me feel secure, but I've never been at a point where I've not been able to afford to put a roof over my head, I've not been able to eat. Yet that belief can overtake you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just one example, which is financials. So sometimes it's about, I think this is where the mental health comes in, it's about what are we really putting importance on? And is it real? Is it real?
Actually, talking about the money, it took me back to, you think when you're a teenager, 18, not got a lot of money, sometimes you're down to your last fiver. Yet, in some sense, you're at the freest part of your life that I can remember, really. You know, I think you felt so free, you'd always find a way, you'd go down the pub even if you had a fiver, your mates would chip in or whatever it may be. But you just didn't worry about it.
No.
And I think that, you know, that freedom is the opposite of mental health in a way. I had mental health problems. And therefore, I'm going to conclude from that if you are having mental health difficulties, then in some way you're feeling trapped. And I think you're feeling trapped by your own beliefs.
By your own circumstances and what level of importance you're putting on it. And that's it. They're just layers. They're not real things, but we put so much importance on them sometimes.
And Joe, the best thing I ever done, I'm sure you'd probably to agree, was actually speak about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually was one of those ones that didn't speak about it for many, many different reasons.
As we've got to know you over the last year, you know, we've said before, we've seen that change in you. But you've come from like, you know, a tough sort of military background. You're quite disciplined, and you're not going to sort of, you know. Well, you're a very courageous person, like you say. You'd be the person that go through the door, don't know what's the other side of it, you know, will put your life on the line, and so on. But you would probably expect others to be similar to you in that respect.
Oh, it annoys me when people don't.
Yeah, but
I expect the same.
Yeah, you expect the same, but we're all different,
of course.
Yeah. But you know what I've certainly noticed, and I can't speak for Stuart, but is that you're talking about things that you perhaps wouldn't have done, and you're taking a slightly sort of different view of it now, rather than going like it's got to be this way. You go, oh, okay, I can see why it'd be different now.
And do you know what has been that is actually us talking about this.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, if I can do it, then I'm sure there's other individuals. But sometimes you've got to swallow your pride.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to sit there and think, do you know what? Actually, it's not actually an issue to talk about stuff.
Yeah. I think us men like to fix things. We like, you know, if we've got a challenge or a struggle,
to know the answer. Yeah.
We want to know the answer. We want to come up with a solution to the problem. But what that can do is create overthinking. Therefore, we start to overthink. And the more that you then overthink on trying to come up with a solution, especially when there's a difficult challenge or one that we perceive as difficult, you can then overthink, trying to find the solution, and all that ends up is you end up on a downward spiral.
Yep.
Of going further and further down, trying to solve it by all heady thoughts. And actually, that's what can get you trapped. I think maybe we don't want to speak about it because we haven't, you know, one reason is because we haven't yet come up with a solution.
Yeah.
And I think men are brilliant about going in their man cave, you know, to think about stuff, to try and come up with a solution on our own. But I think just speaking about it gets it out of here, out into the world, and that's one reason why I think just speaking about it can make it feel less of a burden on us because it's no longer just with us.
Yeah.
And look, we're putting it on a recording.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you can't get any more vulnerable or exposure than that.
Yeah.
No, and you know, I've mentioned before, I've hit some real lows in my life where I thought, right, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, looking back at that, it seems a million miles away from where I am now. But it's when you just make these things that seem important the most important thing.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah,
they're not.
that's
There's
true.
always an answer. You know, and that's. It was very difficult to talk about at the time because I was going through some sort of a process. But what I actually did was I looked at, well, what can I do? I realised I'm trapped by my mind. And that's when we talk about freedom, it's freedom of your mind.
Yes.
It's not the external stuff, it's the being free from those thoughts. What I went and did was I went and invested in myself and did an NLP course, which I know all of us have done. And from that moment, that helped me see the world very differently. I started to realise that, you know, I'm not my own mind. It's just a part of me. It's not who I am. And I think that's a big, big part of it. And I think sometimes people fall down the trap as well. They'll think that, you know, the way to combat negative thoughts is with positive thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. There is something in that, but I think that just what we can often do is think that positive thinking alone can sort out our issues.
And actually, that's just creating more thought.
It is. And all we're often doing is reframing this stuff into a positive light. But actually, and this is where we can get into the more deep stuff, because it's not so much of what we're thinking, it's the feelings and emotions that we're not properly processing. We're trying to avoid them. And actually, from my learning, you know, I've been in my head for so many years. And I've only just learned really now to get back into my body and go into my feelings and emotions and actually spend time there. And whatever pain it is you've got to go through it, because that's part of the repairing process.
Yeah.
Trying to push that aside and, you know, I'm not going to get upset. You know, I'm not going to cry or whatever it is. It's just, you're just denying yourself something.
Yeah.
And I remember, Mike, you saying to me, actually, there's, you know, on the battlefield, when the first time you was under enemy fire, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You cried.
100%.
What was that like for you, you know, with that experience? Because I suppose up until that point, what was you like until that?
Oh, I was a typical Essex boy, I suppose. I think the biggest thing to take away from that is that you don't actually realise what happens once it happens. You can't prepare yourself for it. That's what I mean. You know, you can try and do as much as you can. You know, it's doing that, or losing money, or losing a parent, or whatever it is. You know, you will never ever understand. And the hardest thing to understand with individuals that haven't done these things is the fear of it. It's the fear almost overcomes the actual point.
Yeah,
itself.
the fear's bigger than the actual thing.
100%. But then once I very much believe in comfort zones. So what I mean by that is I like to push my boundaries, as you guys will know, in terms of comfort zone, because I want to make not the norm, but I want to make things my comfort. Yeah. So if you live in a bubble and you don't push the comfort zone, then you're going to be constantly worried, constantly feared. But ultimately, it's like bungee jumping. You know, have you guys done bungee jumping?
I haven't actually, funny enough, but
I love it.
Jumped out of a plane twice, but not done bungee jumping.
Is the principle still the same, right? Yeah. You're still jumping out of something that actually you think, well, why am I doing this? Yeah. But now when you've actually done it, you actually sit back and go, what's so hard about that?
Yeah.
You know, I'll make an analogy in terms of what you said about NLP. Now, NLP was quite good for me. I think it's hasn't been as good as the PQ program that we've done, and I think the biggest thing to understand, and like you were saying, if there's an issue, it's all about positive mental attitude, which is great. Well, who's it? Linford Christie said it, didn't he? PMA or whatever it was, you know. However, if you don't, I'm going to put an analogy, and I've never done an analogy before, have I? I don't think you've ever heard me do an analogy.
Yes, do an analogy.
I'll do an analogy. I think,
buckle up, folks.
Yes, strap in. I've never done this. I'm an analogy virgin. I actually would like to say, I think it's important to realise obviously the benefit of the PQ program and what I got out of it, and I speak massively from experience of knowing what the inner things inside. Because I thought I was doing great, but until I actually realised what the issues were, my saboteurs were. But my analogy is this: I think we're very similar to like a car engine. Mm-hmm. So you have a car engine. I had a car, and the head gasket went. We tried doing all sorts to try and fix it. Change spark plugs. We've done this. You put something into the gasket which seals it. Didn't work, and it wasn't until they stripped the engine and turned around and said it's a head gasket. But do you know what it was? It was a tiny, tiny little crack in that rubber seal that went round that was causing a leak. Mm. And that whole thing brought that entirely
the whole
car to stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where my analogy comes in, where there will be one thing, one key thing that will actually stop your engine going, will stop your head going.
Yeah. Yeah.
But finding out what that is the key.
Yeah.
And once you know what that is, then you make a decision. Do I try and fix it and change the head gasket in this analogy? Or do I just think to myself, do you know what? Write off my losses, sell it, get another one.
Yeah. I think what I take from that, and I totally agree, is what you've got to do, because positive thinking alone is not going to solve your problem. It's about doing the deep work.
Yes.
And really understanding yourself, what makes you tick, and also what you're normalising. Now, all three of us have done, we coach, but we also work with our own coaches as well. And you have to go through uncomfortable stuff sometimes to go, shit, that's a part of me. That's what I do. That's not good.
Yeah.
And it's not always obvious to us. And that's why working with a coach is so powerful, because when you come up with that level of awareness, then you can start to see how it plays out so many times in your life. And it's that whole thing of, if I do what I've always done, I'll get what I've always got. So until you can recognise those things, like find out where your splitting your head gasket is internally as the metaphor, then you're not going to overcome those problems. And that, you're right. And the PQ program, I think, has been absolutely reflective for all of us. By the way, guys, if you go onto our website at www.rediscoveringyou.co.uk, you can find out more details about the PQ program, because it's actually something that we run as well. It's powerful. It's a 7-week program, but have a look. But going back to that, I think absolutely, Mike. I totally agree.
And I think also as well, one of the key things that has helped me get through this is, and I liken it to the military, where you'll have an officer. So everyone knows what an officer is. Someone's gone through Sandhurst, someone's been out. And I had numerous run-ins with officers. If you're watching this, we did, I know. But I see them as the officer coming out on tour or with the work that we were doing. They did that for a textbook. So, and then the only people I would listen to would be the people that have actually done it. Yeah. Now, I've gone through my entire life of actually listening to people that have done things, actually experienced it, rather than out of a textbook or in a book, if I'm honest. Yeah. So for me, when it comes to the coaching, and this is just for me as a side note, but if you are thinking about having coaching or you are thinking about doing it, I think you've got to find someone that is, I'll say, similar to you, because you're not the person that's a yes person. I think it's got to be someone that has potentially experienced certain things. And I think this is where we come in, because we are discussing this. Now, yes, what are we doing? We're coaching, we're talking, we're doing this. Now, every single one of us has had different experiences. Yeah. So individuals watching this will actually look at it and say, well, you know what? I've had that experience. So they'll resonate more with you, Stu, for example, or more with you, Mark. Not saying they wouldn't listen, because we all have opinions. Yeah. But that's the person they'll go to. And I think that's the key when we said about talking. I think it's actually talking to individuals, and this worked wonders for me, is actually talking to someone that understands what you're saying.
Yeah.
From experience.
I might turn to do an analogy now, Mike.
Go on, buddy.
Yeah. So look, it's a bit like this. If you're starting a business, for example, okay, do you want to be getting you've just started up and you're looking to make the first few thousand, maybe. Do you want to go and speak to a billionaire about how to run the business? Because they're going to have such a different view of where they're at. Yeah, you need someone who's probably done that more recently.
Yes.
Yeah, who's gone through some of the, those start-up pains and can remember it well.
Yeah. Even if the billionaire was there, the fact that it was probably so long ago. I mean, interestingly, when you become really good at things, it can be difficult to teach that to others because actually you forget how you became good
Absolutely,
at it.
absolutely. And it is those sorts of things. Like running a small business with maybe 4 people is very different to running a small business with maybe 50 people because you'll have forgotten a lot of those pain points that you went through. So when it's still fresh in someone's mind, that's when you can get that advice. And I think that goes back to your point, Mike, as well. When you're at that point, you go, look, perhaps I could do with some help. Maybe I'll get some therapy, which we'll talk about in a minute. But, having someone that's gone through a similar experience to you and come out the other side of it is invaluable.
100%.
But if you've got someone, if you're going to go to the Dalai Lama to suddenly go from where you are to having that sort of level of enlightenment, if you want, it's going to seem so far removed.
But at the same time, you said before that we're a torch, right? So if you're using the Dalai Lama, did I say it right?
Dalai Lama.
It'll do.
That fella, him. When you're using him as in that approach, is he shining a light or is he actually shining a massive light? And what I mean by that is in order for you to actually get something out of it. This again, for me, different opinions. For me, it's got to be focused on me, because if someone's doing something that is very objective rather than sort of subjective. If someone's going, look, there's the answer, find it in there. Well, if you don't know what you're looking for, how are you meant to do it?
Yeah.
Whereas if you have someone when you're talking about things that actually pinpoints and focus on what you're talking about, along with the own experiences, you get more from it.
Yeah. Actually, that brings up something in my mind about. I think this is where blokes, and like we've got to be honest here. I think our fixing to come up with a solution, this is why it doesn't work with women. Because, actually, and I think it doesn't work with us all the time either. Because sometimes it's not about coming up with a solution, it's just about speaking it out so that we can start to understand what that feeling's like and what's going on for us, rather than actually just coming up with a solution.
Yep.
And I think, that's where women differ, is that actually they often just want to speak just to air it out and share.
Yeah, I think that on that point, that was, I think you put me onto the podcast actually, Jordan Peterson.
Oh yeah.
On Diary of a CEO.
Yeah.
And he talks about that. It's about that masculine, feminine thing. The masculine energy is to problem solve, to fix, whereas the feminine energy is all very, very much about intuitive. And it goes back to sort of like the, caveman days, if you like. The men would go out and hunt together, and they had to learn to communicate well to stay alive.
Yeah.
And work in a certain way. And but they wouldn't perhaps have those deep conversations that women do with each other. And when the women are staying back at the camp, they're relying on their intuition that there's something wrong. They don't know what it is, so they verbalise until they get it. Okay. And then it's like, they'll talk through. And just by talking it through, then they'll solve their own problem. But men want to jump in and that's when we get that a lot of the time. Yeah. And whether that's true or accurate, I don't know, but it made perfect sense to me.
Yeah,
that is exactly the dynamic sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
And I think that's a very good topic when we talk about relationships, because, and I'm going to digress a little bit, because I think mental health is actually relatable to relationships.
Relationships, finance,
100%.
A zillion, a career issue. Absolutely. It could be anything.
But what you were saying there will remind me when we do relationships to discuss this, is that when you are in a relationship, whoever that may be with, man, woman, goat, I don't know, wherever floats your boat, I don't know, but for me, it's about having a person that, it's the opposites attract.
Yeah.
I think, yes, maybe when you're younger, because it's a bit fiery, you like it. Now, at 45 years old, I don't want someone that's the complete opposite to me. I want someone that actually has the same thought process. Not the same as me, because then it'd be two different.
Not identical, but
correct.
Yeah.
Someone that wants the same things, and that actually helps mental health. Because if you've got someone you can open up to and talk to, and the answer that they give is not something that's miles away, is actually something in the same sort of half ballpark, on the same page on the map, that helps. And if you're both aiming at the same target, that has to help.
I think actually, we will speak about this more when we come to relationships. However, the most important thing, I think, when it comes to relationships is actually values. You've got to value the same.
Totally.
Because you could come at it at different angles, but as long as the main value behind it is the same, actually, you can be a little bit different and it still be okay.
I think, it's about context, isn't it? You know, and so I totally agree. I think, and that's again where we start to have to do the deep work on ourselves. When we understand what our values really are. You know, and then it's about being aligned with someone. You might not see, all of us see the world differently.
Yes.
But when we're in a situation where we've got, we're clear on our values, and we might be starting a relationship or in a relationship. That's when you can ask, well, are these values aligned?
You sort of mentioned it. Really, it's about what's important. That's what is important to us is really what we value the most in life.
And if we don't know if we don't know because our brain is not there yet, how can we be chasing something?
Exactly. So we've got to know what we're chasing, right?
100%. This goes back to the gasket.
Exactly.
You know, some people might turn around and say, you know what, I want loads of money. I've got zero interest in being a millionaire. Do you know why?
No.
Simple reason is because they can't achieve it, potentially, but it's because there's a pressure that comes with it.
I would just always ask the question. So, okay, why do you want to be a millionaire?
Yeah, of course.
And it's
never really about the money.
No, it's the funny thing is one of the best books I've ever read is The Psychology of Money by a guy called Morgan Housel. Again, he's been on the Diary of a CEO. Very, very interesting book. And actually, when people talk about they want $1 million, what they usually mean is they want to spend $1 million.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that's it. So they want that. They want that buzz of spending and so on and so on. The point is that there's two types of people really, and that's those who are good at making money, and then there's those who are good at keeping money. All right, and it's not very often that you see someone that's good doing both. I digress a little bit, but the point is it's about knowing yourself and what it is. When people say I want to be a millionaire, and I do this from a coaching perspective, why? Yeah, and often what it gets to is, well, then that way maybe I'll have proved myself to my dad who never believed in me, and that's the thing: is know why you're doing those things behind it.
Joe, you said one key word there. Obviously, what we do in Rediscovering You is the word freedom. Yeah, freedom is subjective to everybody. It's not objective; it's subjective. What you class as freedom, you class as freedom, and me and everyone else, right? And you see all these adverts. And I think I've said this before, and it's the most annoying thing in the world, but it sells. People say, do you want to be financially free? Seen them? You want to be financially free, you want freedom, and you've got the money. That goes on to your point. People want to be financially free so they can just go and spend it. But actually, for me, and the biggest thing is, the biggest gate that's ever opened is free in my head.
That is for me. That's what freedom is.
100%.
It's free from your mind.
100%.
Free from all of those thoughts that are telling you you've got to be a certain way and do a certain thing.
It's not financial.
Yeah. There's plenty of business people out there. Yeah, multi-billionaires. Some that are not happy in life.
Like most.
So you've got to ask the question, because if that's the case, it's not really about the money, right? There's something more to freedom than just money. You know, that it doesn't buy you the mental freedom. I actually think a big part of freedom is when you genuinely don't give a fuck what other people think. Yeah. That's part of it. And again, another great book is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Yeah. That's a great book. Now that doesn't mean to say you don't care. I think people get it wrong sometimes when they hear that comment. It doesn't mean to say that you don't, that you can't care. But yeah, there's this thing about us as human beings. We're worried about whatever.
We worry too much about too many things, and it's being much more narrow about that.
Exactly.
What do you think we should concentrate on worrying about then?
I don't think we should worry about anything.
No, I think that's the answer.
There you go.
I don't think we should worry about any, because most of worrying is future focused. It's worrying about what might happen in the future.
Yes.
And that's what fear is. The acronym for fear is, false expectations appearing real. And most of it goes back to your point about the bungee jumping, What is it the fear of doing something or something happening is usually far greater than the actual reality of it itself.
And do you know what fail means? FAIL? First attempt in learning.
Yeah,
there you go. I like that as well.
I've not heard that.
There we go.
There you go.
But
you heard it here first, guys.
You did.
But that's what we're. Actually, when we talk about mental health, a large part of that is about anxiety and about thinking about the future.
Yep.
It's not actually happening to you there and then as such.
Correct.
So I think, let's think about the question about, so what is therapy? What is it about mental health and overcoming the challenges that we have in terms of mental health? What do we think that's all about?
2 words for me.
Yeah.
Life changer.
Life changer.
100%. Best thing I ever did was go to therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
The best thing. It changed my life.
And what do you think, when you say it changed your life, what do you think the number one thing was that changed it? Not in a content sense, but contextually, what do you think?
I think contextually, I'll say 2 things.
Yeah. Go on.
Firstly, enabled me to speak about what we're talking, about. Enabled me to be in a position where I couldn't go. It took me 18 months.
Now, I wanted to ask that, all right?
Yeah.
So I want to come back to this point because it's really important. But I think what's also important for our listeners is when you were first sort of introduced to the idea of maybe therapy would help, what was your resistance to it? Because you said it took you 18 months.
Yes.
Yeah, why, what was it you thought it was, and why you had resistance to it, to actually what you actually found it was?
Because it made me, or my fear of it, of not knowing what it is, because I've never done it before, but the fear of it was that it would change me. So I go forwards, go backwards. It's changed me into what I am now. It unlocks something.
Yeah,
and
okay.
Talking about
so it was the fear of being unlocked.
100%. That
fear of changing you into someone that you wasn't at the time.
No, I actually had fear in it changing me to the person who I thought was weak. That's what it was. Because I thought I was strong. I thought I couldn't be touched. I thought I was what's the word? Immortal.
Yeah.
So if you let something in that would change it, that's
100%.
Yeah, okay.
I was earning good money. I was doing what I was doing. I didn't have a care in the world. But do you know what? Looking back on it now, Jesus Christ, I was full of problems.
Yeah.
I was full of them.
Yeah.
But because of my mentality and what I was told as a child and how I've been brought up, it was a fear. Therapy was not a fear of sitting talking to anyone. I'll talk to anyone.
Yep.
It really doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
It's the fear of unlocking something, making me speak about something that actually I blocked away and hidden down there, and turning me into a person who I believed at the time was a weak person. Someone about feelings, being vulnerable, being able to share things.
To all of that as well,
And do you know something? That person, I am on the way to being that person. Yeah. I'm miles away from where I was, but being that person.
Well, we're all a work in progress.
100%. I feel stronger, happier, better. I feel more motivated.
Yeah.
I feel more emotion. And actually, the biggest fear was actually being who I am now.
Yeah.
And do you know something? I actually fear being the old person.
Going
back to that.
So that's, I mean, that's such a. I mean, even just for the sake of this podcast, that's probably the most valuable thing that we can take from it.
Yeah.
Because I think, again, a lot of people are very scared of therapy, and it is the deep work.
Yes.
It's the deep work that we fear, because what am I going to find out about myself?
Yes.
That, you know, it's going to affect me and means I'm going to be different. And I think we've all been through these experiences. I've worked with coaches and I often get called the business therapist now as well, where I'm working business leaders, and they come in and they think that they're going to just talk to me about like their business, and I'm going to give them a system. And actually, what I talk about is then what really drives you. Why?
Yeah.
Why does it really drive you? And all of that sort of stuff. Therapy is to help in your words exactly, help you unlock that part of yourself that you've convinced yourself, I've got all the answers, I'm infallible, nothing
100%.
can touch me. And then you realise after that actually that's the bit that I'm holding on to that I think is protecting me, but actually it's holding me back.
Absolutely. It's a weight rather than a shield.
Yeah.
It's actually a 1,000,000-ton weight.
All right, so let's come back to what do you think the two things were then?
So yeah, the fear of it, and I think that goes hand in hand, is actually blowing my world apart of everything that I thought. Because the fear comes from the fear of doing that, but actually I like to picture myself into an environment, and I could not see how I could function in what I believed therapy was going to do for me.
But so this is interesting, right? So because this is the other thing, you had never been there. That's the thing. So it's very difficult to picture something in the future of how it might be different if you've never trodden that path.
100%. But do you know one thing that I did with this, and one thing that I'm proud of myself for, and I think that's another word, right? That's another word about mental health, is actually being proud or saying well done to yourself. Because I don't think you do that, right?
Congratulating yourself.
100%. And I think the one thing that I'm proud of, and I've never done this my entire life, I've never given up.
Yeah.
I've always run through that wall.
Now that,
haven't always gone through the wall, because it's a wall that I can't penetrate.
Now that, I think, is the benefit of having a stiff upper lip. You know, we spoke about that earlier today, that the downside is that we don't want to admit, we don't want to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But the upside of having a stiff upper lip is that even if you get knocked down, you can get back up again.
100%.
Now, the problem comes is that if you can't actually find the path forwards because you're too stuck in your ways and thinking how you've always thought.
Yeah.
And this is why talking about it and getting it out is one important
I
step.
think we can encapsulate this in one very simple phrase, which always sticks with me, and that is, you know, if we want change in our lives, we've got to be the change. Yeah. And sometimes it's that fear of, going back to your point, you know, until we make that, you know, the change starts with ourselves. It's not the external. We can't change the external world, but we can change how we feel about it, and we can change how we show up in the world. And that's what therapy gives you. It's that awareness to be able to go, let's break through these barriers, get different perspective.
And I think, right, so actually when you weirdly, even for me, like when you say the word therapy, it sounds quite scary.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
actually all we're really talking about is firstly having the opportunity to share it and talk it out. And this is what this podcast is about. That, you know, we want to open up to the viewers and to each other, and we want you to open up to us and add some comments, questions, subscribe if you can, and if you want, but what's the harm in not doing so? We want to create a space here where people start to open up, and, you know, particularly men, because at the end of the day, men don't talk enough. There's no reason why we can't or shouldn't. And I think it's about getting rid of the old ways of, you know, the old views that people our age were brought up to say, you shouldn't you can't be weak. And actually, it's not. This is the whole point. We believe it's going to, in our worldview, we think opening up is a weakness.
100%.
It's absolutely the opposite.
The best thing you can do.
And do you know what? I'll say this now. I would never have dreamed in a million moments in my entire life, especially at 45, that I'd be sitting here, A, opening up,
Yeah.
and B, doing it on camera.
Yeah.
I never, ever, ever dreamt I would have done it. I would have actually sat there, the past me would have sat there and gone, nothing wrong with me.
You'd have
I'm fine.
actually fought to do the opposite.
Oh, 100%. But actually, I feel much more comfortable. I'm relaxed. I'm sitting back here. I'm not sitting forward. I'm not, I'm actually relaxed talking about it, thinking to myself.
And it's valuable. It's the goal.
And do you know what you turned around and said? The fact is, not caring is that I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I don't.
No. Look, often the biggest judges of ourselves are ourselves.
Right.
And that's the bit that, recognising that is the bit. Once we get out of our own way, that's when the magic starts to happen.
100%.
And on that note, I think...
I feel like Paul Daniels.
On that note, I think that we've done, a good old chat on men's mental health today. There'll be plenty more of this in other podcasts that we're doing. So let's just have a quick round up as well before we go offline. But Stu, what do you take away from today?
Don't overthink. Get into your body. Share with us, with friends. Speak about it. Yeah. Actually, sometimes down the pub, you'll go with your mates and you'll talk about things. I think that's a good opportunity, and I'd like to think this is a bit like being down the pub.
So open up.
And open up. Yeah.
If you're around, isn't it?
No, I'm not that open.
No, nor's your wallet.
And you, Mike?
My takeaway is this, that first of all, being able to speak about this in front of people is a major thing. And I think the most importantly, going back to that analogy, is actually finding what that thought is. Doing the work, digging deep.
Do the deep work.
Do the deep work. And I will guarantee you, 1,000,000%, it will benefit you massively, short term and long term.
Yeah. Okay. And my biggest takeaway is, as I said a few minutes ago, is that if we want change in our lives, it starts with ourselves. Okay. So if we just keep doing what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always got. Simple as. All right. So just recognise that part of you that you're pretending, you might be protecting, that you don't want to unlock, is probably the difference between you, living a life where you're full of fear, constrained by your thoughts and everything else. But actually, once you unlock it, you start to see things different and you can move forward. So that's it, guys. I think that's a wrap for today. And we look forward to seeing you all next time.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Talk about